All right, so for this particular video, I'm gonna go through the first section of notes. I wanna make sure that we are totally good to go on how to annotate them, everything. What we're gonna do in the future is that you're actually going to submit your pictures of your pages showing that you annotated and highlighted them as well as you followed along with the teaching videos. So the very first thing on this first page is talking about the importance of DNA. So the most important things on this page would be knowing that DNA stands for deoxyribonucleic acid. Okay, so we talked about nucleic acids in module 2. So these nucleic acids are things like DNA and things like RNA, okay? And these control our traits, everything to do with heredity. Okay, so every living thing is going to use DNA in order to make proteins which determine traits. This is a huge component of this particular module. So DNA is containing the instructions for making pigments, such as the ones in your eyes. Okay, it's also responsible for making pigments to give your skin a certain color, your hair a certain color, so on and so forth. All right, so DNA is packaged in something referred to as a chromosome. So if we think back to module 5, it was talking about chromosomes themselves, all right, and we talked about these chromosomes being doubled up, all right, so packaged kind of in that little shape that looks very similar to this. Okay, so we have this doubled chromosome, which is just one single strand of DNA that's all packaged neat and nice all together. Okay, so these chromosomes are found in the nucleus of eukaryotic cells. In prokaryotic cells, they are found free floating in the cytoplasm. So DNA, we're gonna write down what is it? Well, basically it is a nucleic acid that controls your traits. Okay, so it makes those proteins that control your traits. Where do we find it? We find it in the nucleus of eukaryotic cells. We find it in the cytoplasm of prokaryotic cells. All right, and it's used for, once again, making proteins that determine your traits. So makes proteins that determine your traits. All right, so that's the first page. Let's go on to the next side. All right, so this discovery of the DNA structure. So it defines for you what exactly heredity is. So heredity is the passing of traits from parent to offspring. Okay, so scientists determined that these chromosomes are what is controlling the heredity, and those chromosomes are made of DNA and proteins. All right, so then Rosalind Franklin was the first one to take a clear picture of DNA. All right, so it gave an offer to what the shape of the DNA is. And the DNA is referred to as a double helix, meaning that it kind of looks like a twisted staircase. Okay, so it's got double-sided, 2 strands, 2 sides, that double helix. Okay, Watson and Crick then received credit for actually finalizing the model of DNA. So they took the picture made by Franklin and they ended up developing a true model of what that DNA looked like. Okay, so the building blocks of DNA are referred to as nucleotides. And a nucleotide consists of 3 different parts. It consists of a sugar called deoxyribose, consists of a phosphate group, and it consists of one of the 4 nitrogen bases. So a nucleotide has a sugar, a phosphate, and a nitrogen base. Okay, those 4 nitrogen bases are adenine, which we represent by the letter A, thymine, which we represent by the letter T, guanine, which we represent by G, and cytosine, which we represent by the letter C. So if we're filling in our side margin boxes over here, all right, we want to say that our nitrogen base plus our sugar, plus our phosphate, okay, is going to make a nucleotide. And these 2 strands are held together by a hydrogen bond, a weak hydrogen bond, and it forms that double helix structure, that 2-stranded, 2-sided double helix structure. All right, moving on to that next page. It's talking a little bit more about the structure of DNA. All right, so it's telling you, like I said, on the front side that it's held together by a weak hydrogen bond. So off to the side, I want you to write down big that hydrogen bonds are weak. This plays a huge component within our next section when we start talking about DNA replication. Okay, so the complementary base pairing is basically just saying that A and T match up and G and C match up. So A and T match up and G and C match up as well. All right, so it says on this diagram, highlight a nucleotide. So if we're looking at this diagram right here, we're gonna highlight that entire nucleotide. Now remember that a nucleotide is consisting of 3 different parts. Okay, so going back to this side, a sugar, a phosphate, and a nitrogen base. Okay, so if we're looking at this diagram, we see our sugars are pentagon shaped, really, so 5-sided sugars. All right, so we've got a sugar, a phosphate group, which is represented by the little circles, and then a nitrogen base. So we're gonna highlight that entire section. So a nitrogen base, I picked the one that had thymine, I picked the one that had T. So it has the nitrogen base thymine, it has the sugar, and it has the phosphate group. Okay, then it says to write out the name of the sugar beside one of the sugar molecules. So we're going to draw ourselves a nice little arrow out to the side beside our sugar molecule, and we are going to name it deoxyribose. That is the name of our sugar. All right, then it says finally draw a box around the backbone and label. So our backbone is represented by all of our sugars and our phosphates. So this is our entire backbone right here. This is our sugar phosphate backbone.